Today, we're going to be looking at one of the most controversial shotguns Beretta ever made, the UGB-25, a break-open two-shot semi-automatic. We're going to be asking why it was made, why it was stopped, and was it any good? When released in 2005, this gun had heaps of potential, and Beretta had enough confidence in the concept to name it Ultimate Gun Beretta. And here it is. The UGB-25 XL Sporting. They made sporting and track models, a couple of variations of each. This is the fixed stock sporting model. It's definitely a stylistic change to a standard Beretta, we'll all agree with that. The side lever, the opening, shell in there, shell goes in the side, like it's an interesting looking gun. That barrel that sticks down really low in the action, the high rib, the little barrel clip at the front. Oh, it's almost unfinished machining on the barrel. We'll have a proper look over it in a sec. Let's shoot it and see if it works first. These were famous for not working very well. In fact, they were originally released in 2005 and pulled off the market very quickly because they didn't work. Fully re-engineered, re-released in 2007, 2008, and then pulled off the market 2011, 2012. I say pulled off the market, they weren't pulled off the market, they just stopped making them because there was probably a limited demand for a two-shot break-open semi-automatic. We're on whole sovereign parkour today because these guns are very ammo fussy. You put one in the chamber, and then, very simply, one in the side like that. Wish me luck. Let's hope this works. That shoots unlike anything I have shot and fired before. But before we go further and have any more shots, quick shout out to this video sponsor, which is Shotkam. They're having a Valentine's Day sale, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But first, I need to shoot this some more, because this is bizarre. It was described to me as a god gun by the owner, generally a term used for guns that are quite good. I mean, it's definitely not bad. But that recoil, seeing as it's a parkour, which is a fairly thumpy cartridge, is unreal. The recoil on it is bizarre. First off, it's an inertia gun, so it cycles off of recoil. It's a short recoil gun rather than a long recoil gun like an A5 or a Cosmic. But that barrel, where it sits right low in the action, you end up with no muzzle flip. Literally no muzzle flip, just a short patunk. But because you have the bolt flying forward and back, there's definitely a little bit going on. You can't feel it. It's so fast, but it's just patunk, patunk. It's odd in a really nice way. I was kind of hoping this gun wouldn't be nice to shoot, but it's a testament to why all the people who use them are obsessed. The other kind of cool thing is that it ejects out the bottom, so there's no bolt work going off in the outside of your right hand eye there. I really do wonder what inspired Beretta to do it. There is an answer to that, but first let's empty it, clip a Shotkam on, go and shoot some sporting. Before we test this on sporting, I need to tell you that Shotkam are having a Valentine's Day sale from the 5th to the 15th of February. They're knocking £100 off of the Gen 4, which is exceptional. We've got a full review of it. It's a gun camera. It records where you shoot, what you shoot. You can use it for game, ducks, clays, rifles, whatever you want. During the Valentine's sale, they're also going to throw you a free hat, free shipping, and a free 30 days return period. All good things. Check them out. Let's go shoot some more. I read about this on the internet but didn't expect to happen. Apparently if you don't close it fully, when you pull the trigger it just opens up a bit and clicks. A little bit like a Benelli if you don't close that bolt forward, or a Lars if you don't push the bolt the way forward. I suppose that's a good safety feature, but let's try that again. The thing you need to get out of is I put a cartridge in, close it and put the one in the side. When you can put that in, then the one in the side, it makes no difference. It's just a semi-auto thing in my head. You always put one in and then close your bolt and then start loading. I suppose you'd get used to owning one of these. As everyone who owns one seems to absolutely love it. Make sure it's closed. We don't want the UGB click. On its own merit, this gun shoots fantastically. Really does. Real clean recoil. Half decent trigger brakes. I mean, for a semi-automatic, the trigger brake is long and spongy, like every, but it's clean and consistent, and that's a lot better than many. It shoots like a big, heavy, expensive gun, and the fact that this gun retailed for $2,400, $2,800 and dollars, it wasn't that expensive by comparison to something like a Krieger or a Berettta or even a DT11 from the same range, but gave people a similar feel. And that's no bad thing, because I'm a great believer that everyone should have access to quality, and pricing people out of a game isn't very fun or very nice, although I think in guns you can get some bargains, as we've proved over the years. Obviously its downfall was just the lack of reliability and the fact that it's a bit funny looking and a bit different to use, and as a community, shooters are conservative and scared of anything new. Second-hand prices are now too high for me to think about having one, but what a beautiful piece of kit to use. It's almost vaguely interesting to load. It's definitely got a lot going on. But before we go back to the studio and have a sort of a top-to-tail look at it and some of its features and designs, I need to clear something up. This is a Beretta UGB 25XL. This is a Cosmi. They both break open and are both semi-automatics. That's it. That's the only similarity. This is a 7-shot boutique, handmade, hand-polished, completely hand-regulated gun that is extremely reliable and has been made for nearly, well, over 100 years. This was made for 4.5 years, and some of them don't work. Before making this video, I did a load of research, and this gun really does divide opinion. Some people hate it, some people love it, some people say it's super ugly. I think I might disagree. I think it's actually quite cool looking. A lot of people say it's unreliable, and that it definitely is, unless you use the correct cartridge. And I think that's what a lot of people ran into with problems, is buying this gun, putting cheap loads in it not cycling. And of course there were probably some that just didn't work. But hats off to Beretta for making a gun that is at least a little bit different. Innovating, properly innovating. And I know they come up with new barrels and new chokes and new stock designs, but actually coming up with something from the ground up completely and utterly different. I said before that there was utility to it, and there was. They wanted to make a semi-automatic that felt like an expensive gun that didn't eject sideways, and I think they did a great job. A lot of semi-automatics, even the high-end modern ones, do just feel like a semi-auto, and this does not. This feels, when you hand it to people and just whisper in their ear, DT10, they go, yeah. And that's a good thing. The fact it ejects downwardly is a huge bonus for trap shooting. It's not a rule in trap, although I believe it was speculated to become a rule. If you've ever stood next to someone with cartridges wanging towards you, shooting DTL, a sport trap or something like that, it's not a pleasant thing. In fact, it's probably one of the most antisocial things you can do. And so a gun that ejects down really made a lot of sense. When you get a cartridge this gun likes, it is really reliable. That short action recoil is really quite smart. There's really nothing bad one can say about it. People have said that it's a bit clunky when you shoot it. I don't think that's true. I mean, maybe by comparison to an over and under, but by comparison to every other semi-automatic, it is very smooth. Let's look it over back to front. The Beretta pad system is interchangeable. We've discussed it many times. It's a really good system. On one of their trap guns, they had fully interchangeable shims, so you could drop it left, right, up, down, in, out, multiple different weights. That was quite a nice thing. But this on the sporting gun is a little bit more familiar. You have a shim on the front. That's quite a nice thing, so you can get this stock set left, right, up, down as you wish. What's an interesting thing is the stock is almost ambidextrous in its palm swell, and actually running through the grip there. Firstly, you have the laser checkered ovals with the Beretta sign. I used to hate this. I used to absolutely hate this style of checkering. I really have changed over the years. It's depressing, isn't it? But the ambidextrous grip is actually really nice, because obviously you can use this gun left or right-handed, and I know a few left-handers who find this gun really ergonomic to use with the left-hand lever, because you can just go for it. Whereas a right-hander, you do have to move your hand around a bit to do it. Not that it's a bad design. I think the lever is the only thing I don't like. It's a little bit big, it's a little bit obtuse versus some of the other things on this gun. Not that it's a subtle gun, but yeah, I suppose I'm just addicted to grants and that kind of thing. To clear stoppages, you actually came with a tool. This gun came with a couple of tools. There's one that screws into the bottom so you can actually pull the bolt back to clear stoppages, which is quite clever. You have a black action. The action is, I should really get a vernier on this, really quite wide but not very deep. Obviously it doesn't need the depth because you haven't got the mag tube off the bottom of the gun, but it is extremely wide to house all of the gubbins. You have a little stop at the front here to stop your hand coming back over the port, and the cartridge, when it ejects, bashes off the back of the action here and drops out. Interestingly, I've watched a few videos on this gun, and lower pressure cartridges eject with less gusto than those Sovereigns did. Those Sovereigns really kicked out nice and clear right at your feet, and that is a huge bonus. The beauty of it, core and shelling them out at the bottom of the action, is at least they're right in front of your feet and not 10 yards off to your right, or left if you're left-handed. Safety catch is really quite a familiar style. This gun is plasticky and big, but that's okay. The rib, this is the flatter rib version. The trap gun had a step-up rib, and I think there was 2 different types of rib on that. They're held on by 2 roll pins fore and aft. The barrel itself is an interesting thing to me. It's a single width barrel with a harsh taper out to the choke end. Most guns sort of swell out towards the muzzle end to take the choke. These guys, when they made this gun, I don't know whether they couldn't be bothered to finish it, whether it was a deliberate look to leave the barrel just as that lathed finish. I don't hate it. It's clearly practical. It's very militaristic, very military-like. In fact, a lot of things on this gun are... No, it's just the barrel that's military-like. The rest of it is just bizarre and insane. But you have this step up. There's a split ring here that connects. That's where the front of your rib goes on. And you have the swollen part where your choke goes. It's weird. You have, say, that unfinished barrel, whereas everything else on this gun, all the aluminium, all the plastic, and all the wood is finished really well. What is interesting about the UGB25 is everybody who picks it up firstly says, ugh, and then picks it up and goes, I could shoot that. The recoil was fantastic. Really snappy, very low. One of the smoothest guns, certainly one of the smoothest semi-automatics I've ever shot. When released in 2005, this gun had heaps of potential, tons of hype. And Beretta had enough confidence in the concept to name it Ultimate Gun Beretta. That is what UGB stands for, Ultimate Gun Beretta. I have found conflicting stories that it actually stands for Ugo Gusali Beretta, but Ultimate Gun Beretta seems to be the popular story, certainly amongst owners. What's interesting is that Sovereign Parkour 6.5 really makes smoke of really close targets. Interesting, but not surprising. So here you go. For those who say they were trying to answer a question that didn't exist by building this gun, I think that is incorrect. Because this gun does things that other guns don't do. And yeah, it probably is a niche, but niche products are good. Sometimes. The recoil is much lower than other guns, much lower than other guns. A lot of that's to do with the inertia-driven bolt head, but also to do with the fact that this gun weighs £1 million. We'll get on the scales later, but I expect it's going to tip 8 in a bit without too much thought. The break open feature was allegedly done because they were going to change the rules of trap to say that you needed a break open gun to be able to shoot it. They didn't actually do that, there's no legislation. But if you want a break open gun, let's say for your pre-shot routine or any of your feeling, that makes sense. It's also, strangely, a slightly more reliable system when you get it tuned to the right cartridge than other autos. You can also see when you've got a second shell in without having to tip it over and checking your mag tube, and you can sit there ready to go like this, as opposed to just cocking it over and loading it and changing it. I know it's not a real excuse for building a completely lunatic gun, but there you go. They have a stupidly loyal following because of that weight and the fact that most of it sits in the middle. This gun, you can sort of put your hand anywhere within an inch or so on this gun, and it feels like it's sort of somewhere sat in the middle. There's a lot of mid-weight, and that's not a bad thing. You get all that single barrel flicky pointability, or some of it, with a gun that has all the characteristics of a heavy gun to slow you down. Technically speaking, on paper, to the committee, it's a clever design. Concluding on a gun like this is hard because so many people who own them are huge fans, and everyone who shot one seems to be a bit of a fan. But the harsh reality is that it killed itself. The lack of reliability at the start is always bad. When a gun company releases a gun that's unreliable, it's never going to be a great success. They then have to fight this huge uphill battle to win the hearts and minds that the new release should have won. It sits weirdly between an over and under and a semi-automatic, and although it really doesn't, I think in people's heads that's going to be a big barrier to purchase. It wasn't cheap. You think back in 2010, for £2,500 you could have bought, well, a 682 Gold D, at the end of its tenure, a 692. You could have bought a second-hand ET10 just about, well actually really not for that amount back then, but there was a lot of guns on the market that perhaps were a better purchase, or at least a safer purchase for a lot of people. I think the lack of education that perhaps Beretta put out at the time on this is a gun that you need to be careful with really wasn't up to scratch, or certainly wasn't where it needed to be to keep the market happy. That said, does Beretta want to get involved in a gun that people need to be careful with? They're famed for guns that any idiot can pick up and go and make noise with without reading the owner's manual. Although you should always read the owner's manual. Mostly I'm sad because this gun had heaps of potential. It was hugely innovative and it could have changed the world. But it didn't, because the world wasn't ready to be changed. Thank you for watching, guys. This channel is made possible by our amazing sponsors. You can find out more about them in the description down below. And if you want to support the channel, you can join as a member. You get loads of extra content, well, some extra content, and occasionally we hook up and go clay shooting together as a membership group. If you don't feel like joining today, we really appreciate you watching and subscribing. Have a wonderful day. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Ben, thank you so much for lending me your baby. Check out the UGB 25XL. They are worth a fortune on the second-hand market nowadays. Also, check out Shotkam. They've got an amazing sale on, but even when they're not on sale, I reckon they're pretty good value, and you can have a lot of fun watching back the footage from every time you go out shooting. Take care, and we'll see you next time.